Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blindspot as well as the latest episode of the Blacklist. Like always, I'm going to talk about something that you want to listen to. You can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Blindspot, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of the Blacklist. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Blindspot. A great episode. We pick up where the last episode left off, and it turns out, Madeline hasn't killed Zapata yet. I'm wondering, my assumption is because Madeline wants, whatever she's got planned, she's going to exact a massive revenge. And it's like, no, I'm going to let, Tasha kind of have her, her freedom for now, because she knows that, probably knows that the CIA is hunting her too. So it's like, you literally have nowhere to turn. So it's like, I'm going to leave you kind of scared, and just the moment, just come out of nowhere and take you out. I also kind of feel like Madeline would want to do it personally because she felt so betrayed, because she put so much faith and trust in Tasha, and just to kind of get screwed over like that. So there's that. Which that in itself leads to an interesting conversation, because Kurt's kind of telling Reed, it's like, okay, you need to forgive Tasha. And he's like, I can't just flip a switch. It's like, but the fact is, Tasha needs us. The fact of the matter is, she was working with the CIA when she was doing all that stuff, but she's back with us. Either you kick her out, or either she stays or she leaves. At the end of the day, it's not just Tasha's decision, it's yours. Because I think he didn't bring it up, but Kurt was literally in a very similar situation, because let's not forget about Jane's circumstances from season 1 to season 2, when he found out she lied, and the whole thing of readjusting to her being back on the team and everything, and the complicated feelings that involved that. It was a very similar situation, so Kurt kind of knows what he's talking about in that same regard. And it's kind of interesting, because you had Kurt talking to Reed, and you had Jane talking to Tasha, because Tasha feels so bad because she walks into the rooms where all the lockers are, and she's like, it's sad, because for her, so I did it by instinct coming in here, but I don't actually have a locker in here. I don't have a place here anymore. It's not just not having a locker. She feels like this isn't her home anymore, because she knows she did all that stuff working with the CIA and stuff. She left. But Jane is like, the fact of the matter is, no matter what, the fact is you are back here. And the fact is, even though Reed is acting the way he is, he's acting like that because he does care about you. That's all it is, that he's hurt. And the fact of the matter is, we are your family. And no matter what, you will always have a place here, because she felt like she didn't have one. Because Jane can understand too, because she's like, I'm trying to make up for a lot of stuff I did when, Remy was in control and everything, trying to find a way to kind of live with that and kind of go on. But like, you kind of don't have to shoulder that alone. You have us too. And I'm like, I love it too, dude, because I brought it up before. It's like, hey, when like Tasha first popped back up, it's like, hey, well, a little earlier, she had, when Reed had arrested her in Mexico and everything, and it's like, the family's back together to a certain extent, but now it's like the family is fully back together. It's like, yay, everything's kind of good to have the team fully back together. But it's interesting, this week's case kind of did a very interesting thing, where it's like, okay, so it dives into like the past, in particular 2 years ago, in between season 2 and 3, and I was like, that's such an interesting time spot, dude. I mean, because there's a lot of time in between that, like, they could do stuff with that, so I do appreciate that, because there was enough of a time skip. I mean, I guess you could make the argument there's stuff they could always go back and do with between 3 and 4, when Jane was Remy, but I guess a lot of that's just kind of like, you don't really need to. It's just more deceiving and deception and stuff like that. But maybe something in between that time will come up later on. But nevertheless, because I think this was such a big monumental moment in the team's history, because the team was kind of scattered all over the place. Patterson was in Silicon Valley. Jane was missing. Kurt was spending most of his time looking for her. We see that Zapata and Reed kind of had issues. Let's not forget Hearst was still around then too. It's like, whoo, jeez. So a lot of interesting things kind of brought up. It's kind of interesting, because like what they did for the episode, I thought was kind of neat. It's the whole like Tasha and Reed relationship, just like it then versus kind of where it is now. It's kind of almost full circle in a certain regards, because they're in this like awkward situation, because it's like, for Reed, he kept sidelining Tasha, and she kept being like, why is he doing that? Even during the interrogation in this episode, she started skating some lines, and it's kind of like, maybe she should go to the CIA, because she just drops it on Reed, which even Hearst was like, yeah, maybe that is right. I guess at that time, maybe Hearst was kind of considering, just because that way it kind of drives less people around Edgar, kind of makes him easier for her to kind of maneuver around, get closer to him, kind of manipulate him when she needs to later on. That's how I kind of chalk that up. But what's interesting though is because for Tasha, she kind of drops like the whole like, oh, maybe I should go to the CIA thing. Because for the reason why Reed was kind of treating her like that was because it's like she got more and more reckless. I wonder, is it just because the team wasn't whole again, and the team was kind of missing its heart with Jane being gone and Patterson not being there, so things were just a little off kilter, I think. And it's almost sad too, because at the beginning, like, it's like, Reed, I think this, I mean, not Reed, Rich, like, I think this plays into it even more about like Zapata not feeling like the FBI was her home anymore. It's because Rich was kind of like, oh no, me and Patterson, I mean, actually not just Patterson, me and her are going to look into this, because we're kind of like a duo now. It's like Thelma, Louise, Chewie, and Han. And you see Zapata kind of look down, because like obviously like it makes her feel more like, oh yeah, like so much has changed while she was gone. Because for her, it's like, let's not forget, like her and Patterson were good buddies, but it's like at the same time, it's like, but their relationship got very, I don't make the argument, not even just saying good buddies, I'd say they're best friends. But the fact is, that whole Borden situation really threw a rock in that whole situation. So obviously, Borden, along with all of Tasha's lies and stuff like that too. It's kind of interesting. We still haven't circled back to the Keaton thing, because he's still in a coma and whatnot. But that's might come back up later in this season. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But it's just like I said, the parallels. But in the end, it was interesting because she was actually telling Reed, like, he didn't want her to go, but he was just saying, like, if you want to go, then go, But she's like, do I have a reason to stay? And he didn't say anything, because that was still the point where Reed and Tasha, and they even admit later on, like, they both knew what was kind of going on. This was after their awkward kiss and everything, and just like things between them being what it was. It's just like neither one of them wanted to take that step to be like, okay, we need to, like they were both feeling it, but neither one wanted to really admit it, So it was that complicated situation. Because if Reed had actually asked her to stay, she says she still would have went to the CIA anyway, probably because she, like I said, just things were just kind of off kilter and everything there anyway. That's how I feel about it. But Reed says the main reason why he didn't ask her to stay is because if he had asked her to stay, it would have been for his own reason. It was like, I wanted you to stay for me, but they're like, who am I to, I could tell you're unhappy here, so I didn't want to kind of hold you back, because it would have just been me being selfish. And for her, it's like, well, where do we go from here? It's like, I went to the CIA, and now that's kind of blown up in my face because I can't go back to the CIA. And he's like, well, the fact is, you're going to stay here, and then we're going to capture Madeline, and we're going to clear your name. But she's like, what about till then? It's like, then if the CIA tries to come for you, they're going to go through me and all of the FBI, and which they would gladly do that because you're family. So I wonder, does Jane actually know that Zapata's kind of responsible? Well, to be fair, it was Blake who... Well, no, that came up early in the season, didn't it? The whole thing about, like, Blake being the reason why Roman got killed. I'm pretty sure that came up earlier in the season, didn't it? Or am I just being crazy? I don't remember. But, like, I feel like Jane doesn't know that Zapata was behind it. I don't think she necessarily asked Blake to do that, but I think Blake was so hurt she decided to do that. It's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe that was like 100%, like, some Sasha influence. I said Sasha. Tasha influence, sorry. But who knows? That might be something we see kind of circle back around. But what's really interesting about this is obviously, like, obviously we got to see how Rich got introduced to the team and everything. I love him kind of poking fun at Stewart while you have him present day being like, yo, R.I.P. Stewart, and everything. And also him getting introduced to Hearst, him trying to help out the squad and everything. Like kind of basically seeing what led to him working with the team in the first place. There's also that little thing between Kurt and Jane I thought was kind of cute, where it's like, oh yeah, Kurt had brought a lead to Reed and being like, oh, I think she might be in, like, Jane might be in Russia. And they asked her present day, it's like, was that you in Russia? And she's like, yeah, that was me. Some stuff went down, and he was like, I was that close to catching you. I was that close, and she's like, yeah, you were. And it's like, oh, it's bittersweet, because it's like at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, but the fact is we are here right now. We found our way back to each other, so it's all good. But I thought that was kind of a little sweet, little interesting detail, So the fact is they added that makes you. It probably won't end up being anything, but it makes you wonder, will it? But I doubt it. It probably was just kind of a little detail of like, oh, that's cool, So. It turns out that this copycat bomber present day, I don't know if I even talked about that at the beginning, recapping it, but nevertheless, But the copycat bomber is like, oh yeah, Lily isn't guilty, because that was always this thing that kind of I got hung up on too. It's like everyone got hung up on. It's like, but then why would Lily confess if she didn't really do it? And it's actually kind of sad, her reasoning for it, because it's like, oh yeah, like basically there was another place, like her parents ran a marketplace, but that place kind of got left in her hands and it kind of fell apart because there was competition. This other place was kind of super exceeding them. Her mom was dying at the time and everything, so it was just a combination of a lot of stuff. So that's why she was doing it. But some surveillance tape thing, and I love that Rich was like, actually, I know I can help out with the situation. I could put it together. I practically built it. He's like, well, actually, I think he was like, I was drunk and I doodled it, and my drug dealer stole it and then took it on Shark Tank and basically got it. Sorry, I was like, oh, that's an interesting story. It's kind of like funny yet messed up in a way, but I love that that's what Rich did. He was trying to get that to be his way in on working with the FBI team, but it's like, lo and behold, someone falsified information, because Patterson looks into it and it's like, whoa, this was doctored, and it's like, oh, it's got to be Rich. It's like, you wouldn't do anything to be on the FBI team, but it's like, no, it's not me. It wasn't me. And it's like, was it Stewart? And it turns out it was Stewart. Patterson's looking into it. It's like, oh, look at his sloppy work. I mean, I know we're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but I mean, he was no criminal mastermind. And Rich is like, yeah, I wouldn't have left evidence behind like that. He's like, still R.I.P. Stewart and everything. So I just thought that was kind of more funny in a morbid way, so. But then I like the extra twist upon it where it's like, oh no, it wasn't just that. It was actually Whites himself trying to convince Stewart. It's like, no, we need to do this. And what I liked was that you could be like, oh, Whites actually had that moment of being like, hey, he wanted to confess, but things kind of spiraled up before he could. What's also interesting, too, is I love that back in the day, he was coming in and excited. He's like, hey, seeing Hearst. And Reed is like, yeah, we caught the bad guy. Wait, what do you mean you might have to let her go because there's no evidence and all this stuff? He's like, what about me? I mean, what about all the, all the people? It's like, you know what, never forget it. What about me? Because he went up there, because he's trying to campaign at the time and stuff like that. I'm like, yep, you've always been an opportunist. Whites, you always trying to fully take advantage of any situation and kind of suck up all the glory. Like I said, it's like he had moments, and I'm like, oh man, you're a good guy, Whites. And it's like, oh, he does something like that. It's like, hey, that was back in the day when he was a little more scummier. Like, he's a little scummyish, but he's not that bad. And then like, there's a whole situation where Reed was like, we had to tell the truth about everything. Like, obviously, like, Reed still didn't know about White's situation, still doesn't. But the fact is that it's like, oh, we need to tell the truth so the bomber will stop. But White's didn't want to. Like, you can understand where he was coming from in the sense of the fact is, well, there's no telling that bombs will stop. There's also the fact is that when it's all said and done, if you do this, it's going to be a snowball effect. Because yes, you want to be right. This little nugget of you that wants to, do the honorable thing. But the fact is, it would undo so much. All the arrests that you and your team made would be undone. All those bad people who deserve to be locked up. And then the whole situation of the FBI's reputation. And, name and reputation would be tarnished, and the team would be disbanded. Like, so much damage would be done, like, would be the fallout of this. But Reed thought it would be, at first it's kind of like, no matter what the cost, it's the right thing to do. But that's what White's put in his head to be like, now think about that before. So, yeah, you're not going to do that. He's like, I still think what you're saying to do is the wrong thing. But Reed was like, you're the boss, so you decide, so. But now it comes out, with this whole situation, and it's like, jeez. Like I said, he wanted to confess, but then he does the drone thing. My initial thought is, like, you can make the argument, it's like, no matter how scummy he is, White has come to care about this team. And yes, he does scummy things in a little bit, but I'll kind of discuss that. But it's like, the fact is, for him, he cared about his team. He didn't want them putting their lives on the line. Like, if it's just everyday duty, that's one thing. But they would be sacrificing their lives for a lie that he concocted. So that's why he didn't want them to kind of jeopardize themselves. So that's why he suggested this drone thing. Tasha and Reed agreed. Kurt and Jane didn't. Because I think my justification for why they were kind of against is because it's like, no, we go about things in a more lawful way. The fact of the matter is, we should go in there, yes, he might end up dying because he might not want to, be taken alive. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to go about this the right judicial way of, like, arresting him and putting him on trial and stuff like that. We need to kind of arrest him. Like, that's the right thing to do in this situation, not just outright just kill him. That's not a lawful thing to do. So that's why they have, because for Jane, it's like stuff like this, the government doing things like this is what pushed Remy to go back to Shepard in the first place. It kind of basically helped jumpstart, the whole Sandstorm operation situation, So then Kurt goes to Hearst. Hearst wants to make a deal and everything. It's interesting because she actually talked to Stewart. Stewart told her the truth, but she was like, oh, no, it's okay. Thanks for confiding in me. I chalk that up to be the thing of like, Hearst is like, let's not forget she was a plant the entire time by Crawford. So what I chalk that up to be is her, it's like, oh, I have this dirt on Stewart, and if later on he becomes an issue, I can kind of sway him away by using like this dirt on him if need be. But I guess the situation never really came up. She really needed it, I guess. You can make that argument. I'm thinking that's what that's supposed to be. Or at the very least, it gives her the leverage she needs now. So it kind of worked out in the end. But I guess she figured it'd be information that she could, bargain with. But I also thought, like, I didn't think about that till now, but mainly I just thought about the fact is that, like, oh, she could use it to kind of manipulate Stewart, but to be fair, she ended up killing Stewart anyway, so it's kind of like, so to the story. And they brought up that whole point of like, the fact of the matter is anyone pushed into a corner will basically do some bad stuff, essentially. That suggesting that even Kurt wasn't beyond kind of doing a bad thing. So now there's that. And then we get the even bigger twist that it's like, oh yeah, that whole situation, yeah, Madeline was behind that. It's like, of course, like the fact of the matter is they did get the right person. That's why it never was consistent, because it's like Lily obviously confessed. So it's like, why would she confess if she didn't do it? They didn't have the evidence for it, but she did do it. And Madeline had, the dude that works for Madeline killed her dad, and he was a patsy in this situation to be, it was all for the purposes of pushing whites into doing something drastic like this so that they can blackmail him later on, because that was the whole point of Madeline being like, oh yeah, let him stay in the position he is, because Weiss has always been malleable just because he's a scummy dude. So she always knew she could get to him somehow, and now she's in a perfect situation to get what she wants. So once again, it's a situation where Weiss isn't necessarily a bad guy, but the fact is he is kind of being it is about protecting himself, because it's like, Kurt, you want to bring up my past? Well, how about we talk about Jane's situation, the whole like her running around, everything she did is Remy kind of holding that above. So it's like, geez, I don't know if they told the rest of the team, because it'd probably be a little awkward, so they're probably holding on to this now, because if he goes telling the rest of the team, it's going to be an awkward situation, because Whites can still hold that over Jane's head. So that's probably why he's not telling the rest of the team yet, until like they have a way out of this, But now Madeline has control over Whites, to do some favor for her in the future. Obviously, he doesn't know this is connected to Madeline, because that might change things, but because he thinks it's someone else, we'll see in the long run what ends up happening. Another thing in this episode is the whole situation with the last riddle from Shepard. I also love, like, Jane's like, oh yeah, there's some holes here, and Rich is like, oh yeah, good work, Jane. That's something. Even Patterson, is over here kicking her own butt about missing, and Patterson was like, no, but I just, and then you have Rich being like, oh no, it's okay, trying to make her, and she's like, because I love their dynamic and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty neat. But yeah, I love that also Kurt ended up telling Jane the truth about it too, because it's like, the fact of the matter is, we had so many secrets between us that it literally almost destroyed us. And he was like, I'm not going to let that happen again. So everything's going to be on the up and up between us, no more secrets and stuff like that. Also turns out that riddle that was left, Patterson says it led to a key, but Jane knows what that key is connected to. What that is, we'll have to wait and see. But man, can I not wait to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this, as Whites will be blackmailed, Tasha's back on the team, and it's going to be interesting as people are going to be gunning her for her, and in particular the CIA, how that's going to be interesting. And that's why I was bringing up earlier, the whole Keaton situation. It's going to take him coming out of his coma to be like, yo, Tasha was working on my orders. It might come down to that. It might be a Hail Mary situation, like where it comes down to the wire, and that ends up being the case. Maybe not. We'll have to see. But also, what is whole key situation about? But also, about Whites being blackmailed. What is he going to do? Will he tell the truth? I mean, he's already covering up this thing. Like I said, it makes you think, like, it was that to protect like I said, he was in the process of confessing. Like, if he had confessed, like, the team would have probably had his back. Well, they would have been like, well, it sucks what you did. The team wanted to tell the truth anyway, in particular Reed did, so it would have led to ruining White's career, and I'm sure he wouldn't have been all about that. But like I said, he wanted to in that moment, but the thing is, wanting to in the moment doesn't make up for the fact is that you didn't in general, so that has to be kind of considered as well. So, like I said, I'm just interested to see where this all takes us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of the Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's focus on the Blacklister in this particular episode being the Cryptobanker. That ended up being an interesting thing because the Cryptobanker is connected to this other kind of hacker person, the Rat. Basically, he's hacking into peacemakers, in particular this little girl, Matthew's daughter. He's the dude that runs this whole company and stuff like that. It's all for, like, you know, transferring money into crypto and stuff like that. Like, I'm not even going to dive into the whole crypto thing. I'm glad that this episode didn't really go diving heavy into it. It's just like a part of the episode. It's not like it's like this is this and that. A little bit here and there, but nevertheless, it's just the whole thing. But interesting how that ended up turning out. The Rat ended up getting killed. I love, really quickly, I love that Matthew kind of blamed Harold and them. It's kind of like, oh, this is your fault. Yeah, we're going to discuss that, but at the very least, we can admit that it's your fault. It's like, really? You're the one that kind of didn't listen to what Aram and Aram was like, hey, don't really do that. Like, we kind of have our own plan and everything like that, so wait for things. But it's like, no, because he kind of jumped the gun and everything. The Rat was like, oh, yeah, now you owe me $6 million, and I'm threatening to kill 1,000 people with their pacemakers, essentially. So, because, like, there was, like, what, 200,000 people that had pacemakers from this particular company and everything. I mean, for them, they weren't worried about the stock and stuff like that, the business. All they cared about was people's safety and stuff like that. So it worked out in the end. I mean, maybe one day the business will kind of bounce back from it. But in the end, I mean, it's just kind of sad that, like, you know, this, you know, extortionist, ransomist douchebag did this. I mean, in the long run, it didn't help him out in the end because he got a bullet for it anyway, so... But, I mean, luckily, it's a situation where everything kind of worked out in the end in that regard, so it's pretty neat. I love that when it came down to it, Aram was like, okay, I got to double-check things. Agent Wrestler, does that look like a O or a 0? And it's like, that's a 0. And it's like, I hate that. Just, it's one of those nitpicky things about computers and stuff like that, especially depending on, like, the font and the screen. It's like an O and a 0 can be so similar. It's just like a little nitpick thing of like, yeah, I can understand that. It's just funny also because it's just like in that like desperate situation to kind of shut things down before 1,000 people get killed simultaneously. It's like, oh yeah, is this a 0 or an O? It's just interesting. But like I said, luckily in that regard, everything did work out in the end. Now, that's just one small part of a much bigger thing going down in this episode, and that is Reddington's whole situation. And that is Reddington was planning to break out of prison, but because of Seema, he had no choice but to kind of expedite his plans. Because Seema was like, oh yeah, and Reddington had this deal with the an immunity deal with the government, and Reddington was like, whoa, what the hell is he doing? And even the judge agreed, like, yeah, I could get the jury out of here for a little bit. Because and it's so interesting because even the judge kind of agreed what Reddington said. It was a situation of you can't do what you're doing because it's a very slippery slope. Because it's like, yeah, you want to throw, because he wants to throw the task force under the bus, because by throwing them under the bus, he makes it so that they're culpable for everything that he did. No, you know, because it's like, oh, you gave him this immunity deal. He kind of did stuff in that 5 years, whatever the case may be. It's more so because it's like, he wanted to make them culpable for it, but Reddington was like, no, because like also the judge had brought up the fact is you doing this is a slippery slope, because if it gets found out about this, because this is how it's going to work. Either they win and Reddington gets, you know, potentially locked up in jail for life, but even if Reddington managed to win, the news would be out there that he worked with the cops for the past 5 years, basically meaning every criminal he has connections to, non-criminals he has connection to, just people in the criminal world, but more so people who have connection to him, which is a lot of criminal people. He's been doing this criminal business thing for a very, very long time. it would basically put a target on his back, which, you know, Seema was kind of fine with either way, just because it's like, oh, you're a bad person, so I don't feel that bad about it. So, but, you know, it's so interesting with storytelling, because, like, when your protagonist is a bad guy, you always feel bad for him. You're like, no, I want the bad guy to win. So it's just interesting how things kind of end up working out like that. I kind of should do that for a topic for a video, I think. I got to keep that in mind. But nevertheless, you know, because in this case, you're like, oh, Seema's the bad guy, but it's like, no, he's a good guy. He's going about things kind of a slippery slope, but it's like, no, he's trying to get justice, because he's like, oh, Reddington, he's a piece of shit human being. He's done a lot of terrible things. He's hurt and killed a lot of people. He's not an innocent person, but because Reddington's the character we've come to know and love for these past 6 years, of course we're going to side with him. You know, it's just interesting with that situation. But I did like the judge being like, yeah, because, like, if no informant feels like they're safe because of the precedent that you're setting right now, no informant's ever going to turn on him. Like, because it's like, oh no, like, you're just going to rat me out. Like, because the whole point is to kind of, like, when it comes to confidential informants, their situation within the courtroom has to be kept secret. I mean, because, like, obviously the moment it gets found out, that person is dead. But once again, that's why it's kind of almost like Seema is kind of pushing for that. I mean, he wants Reddington's dead. He already made it clear by, you know, trying to give him the death penalty, but it's like one of two things, and it's like, you know, so it's like, because you're almost cornering Reddington, because you're almost making it so that even if he did win, he'd still end up losing to a certain degree, you know. So, but I think it's also because Seema was that, you know, Seema was very confident in the fact that he would win in the end. So I guess, you know, it kind of works out in that regard. So, but nevertheless. But the judge can't really do much about it, and Reddington's running out of time. And I love that, you know, Vegas and Vontae asked him, so, okay, so when do you move? He's like, Thursday at 4. And they're like, wait, Thursday as in tomorrow Thursday? And he's like, yes, at 4. And so he's busting out. And I love Reddington makes a big gamble. And he says, I'm guilty. Because for Reddington, he's like, because if he doesn't do this, the task force gets dragged into it. And it's like, the task force are good people. They were simply doing their job. Like, no matter how you feel about me, which I know that's what this is all about, don't drag these good people in. Because all they've done is do good work, you know? Because it's like, because he wants to make it seem like they're accomplices in everything that Reddington's done. It's like, yes, Reddington himself has benefited from these situations, but the task force has taken a lot of terrible people, you know, out of the world and off the street circulating the criminal enterprise, you know, so it's like they've done good. You can make the argument, I'm sure, that, like, Reddington is securing his own future by being like, by making sure the task force is kept out of it. Ultimately, when everything's said and done, he can get his immunity deal back later on because the task force is still in play and stuff like that. So, like, this whole thing would drag them through the mud, get rid of the immunity agreement. They're basically, it's also the thing of, like, the task force would be kind of thrown in the mud, so they'd all kind of have to suffer the ramifications because the government would throw them under the bus super hard in that regard. But it is also because, no, he cares about that task force, because he cares about everyone that's on that team. Like, they, in their weird way, not only is his daughter, you know, Liz, a part of it, but it's also like they're people he's come to rely on, you know, and he actually does care about them. So I think you could make that argument. Maybe that is his intentions, but I like to believe, me being the optimist that I am, just like Reddington is, I like to believe that he did that because he does legitimately believe and want to take care of the task force. It wasn't him just looking out for himself, you know? That's what I believe. Even to the point Liz is like, wait, you want, like, she's like, I'll testify on the other side of things, because they had a whole bunch of different people from different agencies coming in and be like, oh, Reddington, yeah, he's wanted in this country for this and this and this and that, bringing up, basically running through all the terrible things that he's done. But Liz, being the profile she is, stood up there in court and was kind of like, basically Reddington kind of, you know, he's a part of the world without really being a part of the world. Because it's like, because of what he is and the nature of who he is, he doesn't really bring himself into the world, except when it comes to Liz. The fact is, he's very enduring. And the fact is that he essentially opens himself up to her, you know, a part of her world and her life, like he does with no one or nothing else. And so the fact is, and even Liz is like, the fact is, I wish I could tell you about the stuff that we've done in the past 5 years, but because he pled guilty, you never hear about the stuff that's shown the conscience that he has. That, you know, it's like, even being like, Reddington, you've heard all the stuff, bad stuff that Reddington has done, but the fact is, you should also know about the good that he's done despite the bad things that he's done in his past. Even going as far as, like, to be fair, that, like, everything Reddington has done is out of love. Even this situation, it's because out of love to me and the task force, you know, he's trying to protect us, you know. and, you know, have mercy on us. And it's like, and she's like, now he's pleading at your feet, and I'm hoping that you do the same for him. And it was like, it was very beautiful. Like, you see, like, Liz kind of getting choked up. Like, even when she went to go tell the team Reddington pled guilty, like, Cooper for the beginning was like, Reddington must have a plan, but Liz was kind of worried. It's like, no, he can't have a plan. Like, she's kind of like, maybe he does, but Cooper was like, it's Reddington. He might not seem like he has a plan, but he always has a plan. You know, that type of situation. Once again, that's the thing. I'm never 100% sure if I know how Liz really feels, because like she's so lying and deceitful this season that I can't tell. But for me, I feel like she was legitimately kind of pouring her heart out, because it's like this person has been her dad, but it's like, but she knows the truth now and everything. So for her, it's like, you think that would she knows part of the truth, so you think that would kind of impede that, but I don't know if she was genuine about that. I want to say she was, because like I said, it even came up this season, her being like, no matter what Reddington's done, he's actually done good. Like, whoever this imposter is, whoever he really is, no matter what the circle, that was before she kind of learned the truth about her dad, the real Raymond Reddington. But the fact is, it's like, you still do good. You've saved a lot of lives, and you never really get the recognition for it. But Reddington's never really cared. Like, you know, you could say, like, everything Reddington's done, even like this whole being a fake Reddington thing, like, I still think the agreement, I think that still stands of like everything he did was out of love. Even the fact is of kind of clearing Reddington's name in the last episodes kind of proves that too, to be like, no, like he was like, yeah, I've kind of been, you know, smearing the real Raymond Reddington's name for so long. It's time to kind of, you know, clear it and kind of be like, this is what happened, you know. Kind of, like I said, throwing Katarina under the bus in that regard, and, you know, the cabal and everything like that. But still, you get what I'm trying to say. It's just, he does have a conscience, you know. That there is someone there, you know, underneath all of that. That is a good guy. Always has been, probably always will be. He's just kind of stuck doing this fraud job of being, you know, Raymond Reddington. So, like I said, I'm not really, I want to believe that Liz kind of really does feel that way, but like I said, I just don't know. Every time I feel like, oh, Liz is being truthful, and then it turns out it's like, oh no, it's further part of manipulation, because for her, it's like she's only concerned about the truth, and now the truth is there, but even then, it's still something she's going to reach for, you know, just because of everything dealing with her mom, you know, Katarina's name popped up in all of this, so it's like, she's definitely not going to back down now, so just all of that makes me think, it's hard to say, you know. So I did ultimately like Reddington's plan. Ultimately, I even love how they cut back and forth in the court case where Seema was like, oh, Reddington's got people everywhere, kind of. No. One of the people on the stand was kind of like, oh yeah, like Reddington's got people everywhere doing stuff for him, while Vontae and Vega are like gathering up stuff for him. He goes to the warden to help him with something, but like, oh, it's like, I'm gonna knock you out, I'm gonna drug your dog, and basically I'm going to pretend to be you. I love it. So okay, so who wants to strip him down? I mean, you know, whoever wants to volunteer. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, how do I look? Never mind, don't answer that, because it's just like, because even Vontae's like, really, you gonna fool people? It's like, I don't need to fool a whole bunch of guards, I only need to fool 2 or 3, which, you know, ultimately when it's all said and done, he did kind of almost get there. I guess you can make the argument if he had told Liz the truth, maybe Liz would have stayed away. But I think it's also because he didn't want Liz kind of involved. Like, he wanted her to have plausible deniability, like without her having 100% lie, because she'd be like, honestly, I had no idea what he had planned, you know, so it'd be a lot more sincere in that regard. He just didn't want her and anyone else to kind of get caught up in everything. But like I said, even going to the point of, you know, pleading guilty, even the judge is like, are you doing that? Are you for real? Because even Seema was kind of like, that actually kind of took me by surprise. I didn't expect you to do this. Like, I plead guilty on all the charges, and, you know, the judge is like, are you sure about that? She was even giving him wiggle room around it, but like, okay, sure thing, you know, so Reddington almost made his escape. It was so good, you know. I was kind of hoping he was going to take the dog with him, but he didn't. I was like, oh, that's just a shame. But almost got there, and Denbei's there with the helicopter, but it doesn't work out. And I was like, come on, Reddington, you have to have like another backup plan, right? It's like, no, this was literally his last Hail Mary. And when it's all said and done, he is found guilty. He will be executed. And it's like, jeez, that's crazy. Because even Reddington, you know, Liz is like, I wish you had told me about this, then maybe I could have helped you. I wouldn't have showed up. You could have gotten away. But Reddington, you know, doesn't blame her or anything. And it's just kind of like a situation of like, you go to the Cryptobanker, find out about Cairo, in particular where the money is. And that whole situation, like that in itself is the last last Hail Mary. This is the last thing Reddington could do on his part, and like everything else is kind of on this end. But you know, the Cryptobanker is like, I can't help you. I don't know what to do. And then Liz being like, you have to. Like, the desperation in her voice makes me go, yeah, that proves to me it's like she had to be sincere. But like I said, she's lied and fooled me so many times. But to be fair, maybe it's not me that Liz is, or not me, just the audience in general. Maybe it's not just her that she's fooling. Maybe she's fooling herself, because maybe she thinks like, oh, I've got this game of deception on lock. The fact of the matter is, I've written it around my finger thinking I'm an ally in there. But even the whole thing of like, don't tell him yet. I want you to be my secret keeper too, because I think she did feel bad about it. Like, I think Liz never really expected things to kind of go down this route. She just needed him out of the way long enough to do what she needed to do, but she didn't expect things to kind of blow up into what it ended up being, And I think that's a big point of contention for her. I think it's why she's trying so hard, because she put Reddington in a situation. She literally put this man who's been by her side through the past 6 years, ups and downs, plenty of downs. But, like I said, there is upside to things. And he may be meeting his end. It's a whole complicated can of worms. And I think, like getting back to what I was trying to say is like, I think she might be thinking like, oh, she's fooling Reddington, but I think it's more so for herself that she doesn't care. Like, oh, the thing she cares about is the truth and finding out that, that truth. But I think it's like his well-being matters to you because there is a connection there, whether you believe he's your father or not, which she doesn't believe, but still, like, it's, after learning everything she did about the real Reddington in the last episodes and everything. So I also want to note, too, there was a part of me that was hoping, like, oh, maybe he can get Vontae and Vega out with him. It's like, oh, 2 more allies on the outside for you. It's like, oh, no, they were just supposed to stick around and be like, oh, yeah, he forced us to help him and everything. So, like I said, a very interesting situation Reddington finds himself in as time is clicking down. Time is up for him. Like, he is going to be executed, and now it's just only a matter of time before that ends up happening. And it's like, will Reddington be able to change everything? Like, how's this all going to play out? Because I guarantee you, even under these circumstances, I bet you that wrestler's like, yeah, I think even with his complicated relationship with Reddington, I think even he's going to be a little bummed that it's come down to this, because he also knows how important the situation is to Liz. To be fair, he also knows the other side of this situation for Liz too. So, like I said, just complications all around. So, I am very, very interested to see where this all takes us going forward into the next episode. This whole man from Cairo and the money and all of that, like where that all takes us going forward, and Reddington's situation. Dembe, I'm sure, is desperate too, because they kind of get that final look at each other. And Dembe, it's like, oh, I could get you, I could save you, but Reddington was like, no, go. It turned into a whole complicated situation. I don't want you getting caught up in all this. So we'll just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good